constantly writing down ideas in a little notebook that I had and crossing things out and going, nah, that's stupid. It was one of the more humbling experiences of my life. I was just kind of a person, for a while there. Growing up, I did not take things. Oh yeah, no,
That's the goal. Let's go
be
hard.
edgy.
Exactly.
No, I wasn't allowed to play video games because the back cover of that book had an insert of a zombified woman who didn't have a shirt on.
Welcome back to Tell Us About. I think we're on episode 9 now. Now, we are joined today with a frog enthusiast who sometimes plays and does Path of Exile stuff. Octavian. Thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
So I always open up with this question, which is, how did you get into gaming?
Gaming as a whole. So video gaming or like including tabletops and card games and stuff?
Whatever you want to go into.
Because when I was growing up, my parents were extremely strict. I wasn't allowed to play video games almost ever. I was allowed to play video games at my grandparents' place, and I just was allowed to play whatever my grandfather picked up from yard sales whenever he felt like grabbing a game and bringing it back home to play on his computer that he had also picked up from a yard sale.
So it was computer games right from the start then?
Yes. No, I mean, I have never owned a console before. I mean, we certainly didn't have one in the house growing up. My parents were very much against that. And my grandparents would have had no idea how to like set one up or anything. The only reason my grandfather had a PC was for work.
Yeah. Most people have been saying the opposite. So I find that pretty fascinating.
Yeah, no, it's weird being a like gaming content creator with that kind of background. I mean, I did start playing video games a lot when I was like 15 or 16 and I got my own computer for school, and then I downloaded Minecraft onto it and played a crap load of that and got really into games. But I don't have any sort of nostalgic feeling. Like the biggest example of this is I played tons and tons of Path of Exile, but I've played maybe 10 hours of Diablo 2 in my lifetime. Like I didn't play video games as a kid, really, so I don't have this like nostalgic connection to things. I've played one Zelda game. I've never played a Mario game. It's just not there for me. I don't know. Not that they're bad games. I'm sure they're great games. I haven't gotten around to playing them.
Now tell us how you really feel. You don't have to hold back. They're all terrible games, and you wouldn't want to play them ever.
I don't know that I can't have an opinion on them. I haven't played them.
Okay. I mean, if you want to insult like Mario and stuff, you're going to alienate a lot of people. If you just want to piss off the whole audience at the start, that's the goal. Let's go
be
hard.
Edgy.
Exactly.
No, the games I grew up playing were the games that you didn't need a computer or a console to play. I grew up playing Magic the Gathering. I grew up playing Dungeons and Dragons, and even that, my parents found a D&D book in my room and took away most of my D&D books because it was the Book of Vile Darkness, which is like the worst one for them to possibly find, because the back cover of that book had an insert of a zombified woman who didn't have a shirt on. And like, I was 14 or something, so my parents were like, you probably shouldn't have this, and just knee-jerk took away all of my D&D books. But my friend had them very legally, had all of the D&D books on a USB drive. Very legally had all of them.
Very legally. Okay, that sounds very legal.
So, we were still able to play, and I would I was one of the cool kids in high school because I would meet up every other afternoon with my friends at the library and play Dungeons and Dragons.
Oh, is that how?
Yeah, no, I was very cool.
You were okay. You were like graded in your school based on how much time you spent at the library, mostly for the coolness scale, 1 to 1.
Yeah, I got a cool plus rating, actually.
A cool plus rating. Is that above S plus?
No, not quite. I could never reach that far.
But above A plus at least.
Oh, yeah.
A library plus, maybe. So, what other board games did you play in addition to? You said card game, Magic, but
yeah, I'm the kind of person who gets really stuck into one thing when I get into things. So, I have played very few tabletops that aren't Dungeons and Dragons. And even within Dungeons and Dragons, I've played very little D&D outside of 3.5 because 3.5 is what I got really into when I was, back in middle school and high school, and I just play that. I like 3.5. And it's to my benefit and to my disservice and on a larger scale, because it means that like when I get stuck on something, I get really, really well informed on that thing. Like I know D&D, or not so much anymore. I haven't played it much recently, but back then I knew D&D 3.5 like in and out. Like I read every rule book back and forth 3 times each. But it also means that I don't branch out maybe as much as I should. Like there's good stuff in D&D 5e, I'm sure. D&D 4th edition existed. So like I
Oh wow!
yeah, I
It was a
probably missed
thing.
out. Yeah, I probably missed out on something there that I maybe would have enjoyed otherwise, but I get very, I get very comfortable within my niche. And it means I know what I do really well, but it also means that I don't branch out extremely well.
When did you start playing Magic? What
I was probably in 8th grade when I was playing Magic. I don't remember much about like the set or whatever it was. My first decks that I got they did a dual decks thing where you could get a goblin themed deck and an elf themed deck, and I bought a pack that had both. And those were all the cards I had, so I just made various kinds of goblin
gotcha.
decks or elf decks for like the first 6 months that I played, because I didn't have any money and my parents weren't giving me money to buy Magic cards, so that's what I had and that's what I played for a long time.
Gotcha. I started playing right in like Ice Age 4th edition and like the end of Revised. So right after the super expensive cards that would be worth a crap ton. You know what I mean?
Oh
Just
no.
like a couple years after, like 2-3 years
Ah,
after, right?
that's unpleasant. I'm sorry.
Yeah, because it was alpha, beta, revised, then 4th.
Mhm.
So just like right there. But yeah. Then I did play Magic for a while. Then I went back to play Magic for a while. Then for a while I was doing like tournaments that you would do like I played the you opened a box and had to make deck tournaments. Those are really fun.
Oh yeah.
And then I also played like the draft where you open up a pack, you take one card, you pass it to the left, etc. And you do 3 packs and you just choose your cards and they give you some lands and then you make a deck out of that, like a smaller deck of
That sounds
30
fun.
cards. Yeah, that was really, really fun because it wasn't like the constructed stuff where it was just like, okay, you spent $600 and you have like the most amazing deck ever type stuff that can happen in that.
Hmm.
It was more like random and how good you are at just building a deck or just trying an interesting concept. So that's what I like also playing little when I did play Magic online as well. I really like playing those draft or the open box things where you made your own deck.
Yeah.
So
Um, I did back in college. I did like one Magic tournament. I went to college up in Vermont in a remote, tiny little town called Castleton. So there was like 8 people at the event. It was like from Friday Night Magic thing that a local game store was doing, but it was a good
yeah,
time.
yeah, yep, that's what I went to. But mine had about like 20, 24 people that showed up
Mhm.
usually, and then the box thing, like usually a set would come out at like midnight or something. So the tournament would go like midnight till like 5 a.m.
Wow.
or 6 a.m. So I did that a couple times. That was really, really fun to do. Just play the whole tournament, once.
Mhm.
Um,
Um, no,
what
go
did
ahead.
you study in college?
Uh, I did not actually complete a degree, um, because I didn't have very good grades in high school because I didn't apply myself extremely well and thus didn't qualify for any scholarships. And then there wasn't money for me to keep going back to college. And there weren't any scholarships forthcoming for me to go back to college. So I went there for a year. I was going to major in American history and then potentially move on to teaching. And that didn't happen.
Well, now
But
you
I enjoyed
kind
my
of get
time
to
while I was
teach
there.
a different way, right? Through YouTube and Twitch,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, that's a nice way of looking at it.
Hey, sometimes I'm very positive. Earlier you got me a little bit negative when we were warming up, and now you're getting positive, James. So just like which side do you get of me?
Yeah. No, college, it was a good experience overall, but like I was, can I swear on this show? I don't know.
Hey, we're past the first 10-minute mark. Hell yeah!
I was just kind of a shitty person, for a while there. Growing up, I did not take things seriously. Um, College was just the thing I did after high school, and so I just kind of went along with it. Didn't really take it seriously. Didn't try too hard, and ended up not going back and having to sort my life out. Um, yeah, no,
So what made you
take
change then and take life more seriously?
um, I the lowest point of my life was so far. Um, hopefully entirely, but so far, was it was after I had come back from college and I was living with my brother. And back in middle school, I had a case of Lyme's disease, which is not very common outside of the northeastern US, but it's a disease you can get from a tick bite that can cause a large variety of symptoms. Generally speaking, it's caught in stage one. Stage one Lyme's disease makes you feel like you're an 80-year-old man, basically. You get achy everywhere. You're super tired. You just generally feel like shit, which is why it's usually caught in stage one because people go to see the doctor for that.
And I'm guessing you did not.
No, I did. I
Oh,
did.
okay.
But the reason why they didn't think it was Lyme's is because I had mono, which has the same symptoms as
Oh
stage one
my
Lyme's.
gosh.
And there is no cure for mono. It's not dangerous though. So you just wait it out,
Yeah,
basically.
yeah.
You have mono for a couple weeks or a month and then you get better. So the doctor was like, yeah, just it's mono, just go home, you'll get better in a couple weeks. Sorry you have to deal with that. And then it turns out the mono had weakened my immune system to the point where the Lyme's disease that had been dormant basically since the 8th grade when I had it the first time flared back up, and because it wasn't treated, progressed to stage 2. And
Holy crap.
in stage 2 it can do not one of three things, it could do all three if it wanted, but it'll do up to three things, which is attack your large joints, attack your heart, or attack your brain. And I was very lucky in that it only attacked my large joints, because otherwise I could have had a heart attack or brain damage. Thankfully neither of those happened, but
Hmm.
I was one of my right knee swelled up to like the size of a football, and I couldn't walk for almost a year.
Wow.
um, and I just kind of realized while I was like at 2 in the morning, while I was laying on the couch in my brother's apartment, staring at the TV screen, watching some nonsense that I don't even remember. I just realized like my life when I could walk versus my life now was basically the same.
Yeah.
I'm doing fucking nothing with my life, man.
Yeah. See, you kind of you had the same moments as like I had, at the heart attack kind of. Like, is this really what I want my life to be?
Yeah. So and at the time, I mean, I didn't actually go into streaming right away, but I did know that I really liked. At the time, I was, how I mentioned a few minutes ago about how I like get like really stuck into one thing. At the time, I was really stuck into League of Legends.
Okay.
Um, I was never very good at it. I got up to like high gold at best, but what I really enjoyed doing was watching esports League of Legends, and so I decided I wanted to try and get into commentating it, because I loved watching, the LCS and the at the time it was called the EU LCS. I think it's called the LEC now. It's competitive League of Legends basically. And so I started trying to get, you know, started just shoutcasting games that my friends would send me or that people on YouTube would send me. I started shoutcasting for amateur tournaments. I did like 2 years of that. And that's where I got started being decent at talking to a microphone. But it never really panned out. And eventually I just decided I want to work for myself rather than working for all of these little smaller companies that were hosting tournaments, or, even the bigger companies that I'd occasionally work for didn't really give a shit about you. They'd hire you on and send you like a gaming mouse for working for 8 hours or something like that.
Did they call you a family?
Nah, I never got
that
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 treatment,
meme,
but
you never got that treatment.
I didn't
We're a
I didn't even
family here, so we're gonna have to let you go with no notice because we're a family.
I was just a contractor basically.
Yeah.
But I really, really enjoyed shoutcasting, and I really enjoyed being behind a microphone and entertaining people on stream and stuff. So I just decided to start trying to work for myself, and I was lucky enough to be in a position that like I had the support of friends and family basically at the time to just spend a year or close to a year and just try to get this thing to work, and started streaming every day for 8, 9, 10 hours a day, which
What game were you streaming when you started that?
Path of Exile.
Okay.
I had gotten I'd kind of fallen out of love with League of Legends, and I was getting really into Path of Exile, and at the time there was not a lot of people streaming it. So I thought, maybe this is a niche market or a niche audience. I can maybe build something here that would have been much harder to build in a bigger game like League. And it's also something that I am frankly am better at. Like I don't have good aim or twitch reaction time or anything like that. I'm not very good at aiming skill shots. I'm not very good at predicting enemy movement,
Mhm.
which are it's a tool set that you really need to like succeed at the highest level in League. Whereas in Path of Exile, what you need to succeed at the highest level is the ability to like have the patience for one thing to really learn complicated end game systems like crafting and character creation and all that, and then also be able to synergize those systems and build something interesting out of them. And that's what I'm decent at. That's why I enjoyed Dungeons and Dragons and why I enjoyed Magic the Gathering. Like the deck building or character building aspect of it is what I love.
Mhm. And of course, Path of Exile is a very, very good game for this like endless depth thing that you crave. Because there's
Yeah.
just so many ever-changing systems that they're introducing. Like, bet you loved the recombinators that just came out too.
Oh yeah, recombinators are awesome. Like I unironically, when synthesis came out and the POEDB or whatever it was, data mined the whole list of all the different mods and how to get them and stuff,
Mhm.
I was fucking giddy reading through that. Like legitimately a huge list of 7,000 different things that you can possibly do that might have some really cool weird niche in it that I could go and make a build around is exactly what I love about D&D and Path of Exile and Magic. It's why I love D&D 3.5 so much still to this day, because it's the version of D&D that has the most errata. It has the most like random little books that you could go and find one specific rule to make a cool character around. Like I love that. That's so much fun. But I realize it's not what everybody wants out of their video game.
Yeah, yeah. How did you first learn about Path of Exile?
A friend of mine goes by Red Hulk online. He had been a friend of mine for a long time. The When I first got into gaming when I was like 14 or 15 was with Minecraft, and that was like the first thing that I got really stuck into. Like I've said, I probably have 15, 20,000 hours in Minecraft, though I don't play it much anymore. He was a friend of mine from the server that I used to play on a ton back in the day, and we had both kind of like I had known him like 5 or 6 years at this point, and we had both kind of stopped playing Minecraft and we're looking for a different game. And he mentioned Path of Exile. He convinced me to try it. I played the game until Act 2. I picked up every single piece of gear that dropped and tried to get it back to the town to vendor it to get as much value as I could out of every instance that I was in. The game really confused me. I died a whole bunch in Act 2, and then I quit. And then it wasn't until
What league was this around, or was this in the beta, or what was it?
there were leagues, but I don't remember which one it was. It wasn't until like 2 leagues later that he convinced me to try it again, and I was interested enough to like build a character and follow a guide and start to learn the systems and understand what mistakes I'd been making and why everything had felt so shit the first time around that I played it. And I was like, "Oh my god, there's so much here." One of the first things that like really hooked me, I think, was the currency system. Um, I know it feels like old hat nowadays, but things like the fact that the currency wasn't just gold, but was like items that actually had some amount of like value to them in terms of their ability to be used to do a thing, that just seemed brilliant to me. That seemed incredible. Like that's so cool.
Yeah, I really like that aspect of it too. Just like you could start with a crap item, and then everything that you pick up for this currency modifies those items, and you can build your own item.
Yeah.
I just thought that was awesome too. Now, I had a different background where I played a lot of Diablo 2. I played a bunch of other things. You know, I played Diablo 3. And just like that in general, I've never had a game like that did that sort of a system. So it blew my mind, even with experience in a lot of different games.
Yeah. It's Path of Exile is such a cleverly built machine. And now that I'm at the point where I have thousands and thousands of hours in it, whenever there's something that's got a little bit of friction or goes a little bit wrong, it's so very noticeable because the game has become such second nature. But occasionally I'll like take a step back and just some of the systems that are in place are really elegantly built from all the way back when.
Yeah. Could you imagine being a brand new player right now with all the
Oh my
systems they've
goodness.
added? Or
The
just
amount of stuff.
of knowledge that you take for granted over years of playing this game.
Yep. No, it's you kind of gotta be either you have to have a really good guide, so like a player who's really experienced in the game who's willing to sort of hold your hand through some of the early experience, or you've got to be the kind of person who sees a list of 7,000 synthesized modifiers and goes, yeah, let's go,
Yeah,
rather than
exactly.
someone who gets overwhelmed.
Gotcha. So, what is your favorite league that's ever come out? Was it Synthesis?
Probably not. The league that I had the most fun in was probably Delve, but I wouldn't say that it's my favorite mechanic. I actually don't delve very often anymore, but I really, really enjoyed Delve League because it was one of the first leagues. It was the first league I ever pushed 100. Like it was, I pushed to depth 1,000. It was the first league where I really felt like I was like, yeah, I'm getting pretty good at this. Like I'm starting to have some amount of mastery over this. I don't know everything. I still don't know everything. That's goddamn impossible. But like it was the first league where I felt like I was doing well as a player.
Hmm.
So I have a soft spot for it, but probably my favorite league mechanic. I mean, honestly, it might be Sentinel, but maybe that's just because I'm currently really enjoying it. I think
Because the Sentinels themselves or the recombiners in that aspect?
kind of both. Sentinels themselves are enjoyable to use, and there is a part of me that likes, hit button, make big loot happen, yay. Like there's a part of my
Yeah.
brain that just likes to see the flashy loot colors show up on screen, obviously.
Well, the nice thing is you could choose your difficulty kind of on demand. So
Yeah.
you like, okay, an intense thing's going to happen. I need to super focus. So I definitely like that aspect of it.
Yeah, and I think they got the balancing pretty good on Sentinels actually. Like Arch Nemesis is obviously messing in a lot of ways with current game balance, and has been a hot point of contention. But like Sentinel itself feels like it makes the enemies significantly rewarding, but it doesn't make them like crazy deadly. It makes them a lot tankier. I haven't noticed like enemies getting way more damage. So if you're able to handle being chased around by some big tanky mobs for a few moments, I don't know. It feels like a very well um balanced league mechanic. It's just a shame that Arch Nemesis threw so many wrenches into the works.
Yeah, exactly. With a lot of the mobs being so scary, it's like, do you want them to have more HP?
Oh no, I don't empower like um I don't empower essence mobs. I don't even do metamorphs. Like
Yeah, yeah.
I don't do blights, but that's because it's probably my least favorite league mechanic, so I have it blocked.
Okay, so the flip side of the question, what was your least favorite league mechanic or like league in general?
Either blight or legion. Um Legion I found got really old really quick. And blight I Blights and maps aren't that bad, but the end game of Blight was like Blight maps, and Blight maps have this dead time of like 2.5 minutes where you're setting up turrets and monsters are barely trickling in, and it's so incredibly boring. And I don't think I've run a Blight map in more than a year. I just have zero desire to run them ever.
I feel the same way. But that's the funny thing is it's a take on a mod from like StarCraft, Warcraft, that's like tower defense that became really
Yeah,
popular, right? So I
tower
played a
defense
lot
is
of that and like that, but that one was a little bit different in that like you upgraded your towers and stuff as you went with each wave, and then it got progressively harder, which is kind of like upgrading the towers, right? And then like
yeah,
except for you don't get to choose where you position them, and then your character is still relevant. That's kind of
yeah.
I think the idea behind that for sure. What do you think? Do you think recombinators are crazier than Harvest was?
No. I think the top end potential of what they can create could be, especially if you look at things in standard, like that one chess piece that had like,
Yeah.
5 legacy mods thrown together or something because they were able to recombinate mirrored items. Therefore, provided you have enough money, there wasn't any risk. But like, yeah, it's standard. I that doesn't bother me too much. No, so I think the issue with Harvest, and I am probably going to alienate some people here, but the issue with Harvest was that like there was two. I'm definitely going to alienate people if I say this. If I don't word this
Give me them
exactly right.
clips. Give me them clips, man. This is gonna be
Um,
it's here we go. Our first segment right here coming up.
sure. Basically, it was too formulaic. Like there was this incredibly clear, unambiguous path for every single step along the way, which meant that there was very little room for innovation or for something cool and interesting to happen from the crafting process. And like I also think that swinging it in the other direction and having complete bald-faced RNG is pretty awful as well, because then it doesn't feel like you have any input or control over the crafting. That would basically be the equivalent of like scour alking an item until the exact mods that you want show up, and that's all that crafting is, which it very much isn't. So like hyperbole in either direction where you can input something in a path of building and just copy paste it to the game, that's pretty shitty and not a good crafting system. And complete and utter randomness and chaos is not a very good crafting system. But recombinators operate in this middle space that's really, really good, where you can choose which items are going into the recombinator. So you have control over the input, but there is a level of randomness in the output where it can sometimes add a mod, and it might not keep everything that you want. And then sometimes it'll keep some of the really important stuff and maybe throw away a few things that you wanted but wasn't that important. So now you're settling for a second degree item, and you can wear that or even recombinate it again. And like there's all of this interesting potential outcomes because of the variance involved. And I think that makes it way more interesting than Harvest.
So Harvest, if they would have made the Exalt slams and maybe the annuls, but they weighted them, would you have been
Uh,
okay with that? So let's say that
what do you
when
mean by
you
waiting?
by waiting, I say 30% of the time it doesn't actually work and it does some random crap to your item. You know what I mean? Like add some
Uh,
other random mod instead of doing what it's supposed to. And the same with a null.
I think that would have been received a lot more poorly than recombinators, because part of the magic of recombinators is the fact that you aren't just working on like trying to get this one mod in this one place. You're kind of going all in with two different items and squishing them together. And you can game the system in some ways to try and get a particular mod. I'm actually, one of my current crafting projects, I'm recombinating rings that have no mods on them, or have like I'll just craft fire res and that's it, and then squish them together, because I'm trying to get it to add a power charge, a max power charge, the Sentinel mod. And that has been the least enjoyable and most frustrating recombinating experience I've ever had, trying to chase that one particular mod, because I'm not anymore taking two cool items and trying to make third cool item. I'm trying to like go after this one specific thing in this one specific way. And crafting is always way more interesting when there's the possibility of powerful, wild, crazy thing coming out of it that you didn't necessarily expect. Like my favorite thing that I've recombinated so far this league was I made a grasping mail which is the chess piece that has the breach only mods. And I got a temple chess piece and I squished them together. And now I have a chess piece with 110 life and 10% max life and 100% Arctic armor reservation efficiency and 30 life gained for each ignited enemy that you hit. And it's just the weirdest goddamn chess piece I've ever made. And I really want to make a build with it. And I'm trying to think of like, what can I make with that? And that's cool. I don't know. That's PoE crafting at its finest, in my opinion.
If you said 100% defenses with the temple mod, I was going to be really, really jealous and salty because I've been trying
No,
to make that all league and it's not panned out for me. So, what if the harvest mod for the Exalt Slam, you still have the Exalt Slam like the cold, it had a 50% chance to add a random really cool mod from a pool of like 5 different mods. So it would either do the guaranteed cold or it would add some weird random mod out of that pool or something.
I think I would
Or some
be.
other percentage.
I think I would be way better or way more in favor of a harvest exalt that exalted on a random harvest specific mod. Yeah, if it were something like that. Like you have a pool of 20 or 25 mods that are similar to the Sentinel mods in power. So similar to things like +1 max power charge, or I think you can get level 4 enlighten on gloves, that sort of thing. And you can only get it through a harvest slam. And that you sometimes rarely get a harvest slam that allows you to do that. Like, I don't know. Maybe it's the part of me that really enjoyed opening up that synthesis list of mods and trying to find something cool. But I always like having new weird crafting options to work with more than just like having a spreadsheet direct laid out way to get to exactly the right top tier meta item.
Mm-hmm. See, I really liked Harvest because I felt like I was incentivized for the time investment to actually do it. Because I'm pretty guarded with my time. I only have a certain amount of time. So a lot of times I use it just to fix resists or get like a tri-res thing, or get a certain thing where I would like just keep ad removing to try to add chaos res to it. Was a pretty common use. Like sometimes there was crazy stuff you could do with mods, but a lot of times it was just fixing resist with a certain one, or I didn't care what tier it was. I wanted to exalt slam a fire, and I wanted at least the lowest fire res to fix something. So I used it for that, and I was very happy with Harvest in its like original mode, especially when I could be like, okay, I want that fire res slam to fix this one piece of gear, and now I can plant a billion fire seeds until I get
it. Yeah, that's fair. I mean, I think the best thing about Harvest was the ability to like have an item that you would consider to be like your project that you were working on and slowly build it up over time. And I think that is a good thing that Harvest had about it. I don't know. There's no way of phrasing it without. There's a camp of people who are just decidedly going to dislike me for my opinion being not in favor of the return.
Oh, but you're talking to me right
Harvest.
now, so who cares? Who cares? You're talking to me right now. I mean,
yes, and I do need to, like, I don't, and this goes back to like talking less specifically about Harvest and more about content creation as a whole. Like, there's this push pull of wanting to, not annoy your community or not make people mad in the larger community of whatever game you're working in, but also wanting to actually express the opinions that you hold. And like, people will go after you for either one. Because if the opinion that I hold is that I don't think the initial implementation of Harvest was very good for the game in the long term, and I don't think that. Like, that is my opinion. There are people who are like inevitably going to find that opinion to be really awful and like vehemently, angrily disagree with you. And I could speak in political guarded terms and be very soft with how I express that opinion, and as a result I would probably keep a lot of that anger and vitriol away from me. But on the other hand, I would then also be tepid, and not really having much of an opinion on the subject would probably also do a lot to alienate some of my audience who expect me to be me and not like try and softball everything. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I don't know. I personally think that the crafting in Path of Exile, especially with the addition of recombinators, I think recombinators are awesome. I really hope they stay core. But I think crafting in Path of Exile is in a pretty good spot right now with recombinators and a lot of other options like fractured mods and cool synth implicits being spat out by Sentinel and essences being way more available than they've ever been. Harvest even being more available than it's been in the last couple leagues.
I mean, I don't think that one's too controversial. I tend to agree. The thing that I didn't like when they changed Harvest is I want to be able to. There's some sort of pride that goes into making your own items or finishing your own items, having a partially created one and doing it. However, like right now, the Harvest mod is completely unreasonable for anybody who just casually plays or like isn't dedicating their whole life to the game to ever find one of the Exalt Slam things. Right?
Yes, no. I feel like they should either take those out or make them more common.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
They're in
my
a weird
biggest
nebulous.
problem.
They're in a weird nebulous spot right
Yeah,
now where it's
so
like I've played multiple characters to 100 over the last few leagues and I've found one. Like they basically don't exist. Yeah, that is silly. I agree with you on that point.
yeah, and so I just want to be able to kind of improve my thing whether I gamble or not. Now I can at least do that with recombinators. I could gamble a bunch and I probably could do it, and I probably could get it somewhat good enough, like a 5 mod where I craft one with what I would say is probably maybe takes a little bit longer than what I think is reasonable, but within one standard deviation of what I think is reasonable. Whereas the Harvest Exalt Slam is like 5 standard deviations, maybe even 20 off of what I think is reasonable for even myself who plays this game, frankly, like almost full time right now, right? Because I'm making content out of it, I'm investing in the community and stuff like that, and I still haven't seen them, and it's like absurd. So that's when I want to be able to do that. I think it's good for the game. There's 2 things to consider. Okay. There's one thing that GGG always focuses on that is that you complete everything and you finish your character too quickly. However, I disagree with GGG here because you know what happens when I finish a character too quickly and there's a lot of diversity? I'll go make another character and go max that out. So I don't entirely agree with them that I'm just going to quit the game after that. Like in the Harvest League, I made a lot of different characters that I fully maxed out, but it was very diverse. So I disagree with them kind of on that aspect. I think that as long as there's other builds to play and a lot of stuff to do, I think if you let people actually get to that point, they would just make another character and kind of go on their way. But where I disagree is like when I get to a 4 mod item and I bench craft it and then having to get, or like even a 3 mod item, and it's so severe trying to get one more property that it's so rare that it's like, I'm just going to stop there and either play a new character or stop playing the league. That's where I strongly disagree with them. But I feel like recombinators solves that a lot of times because you could like gamble for that last item. Now, if trade wasn't dog shit, I'd be really, really happy. You know what I mean?
See, that's a topic on which I'm not very. I don't have a lot of personal investment. I don't have a lot of. I'm not very educated on the topic of the larger trade experience because I'm a hardcore trade player and it's basically a private league.
Yeah.
So like we don't. I trade like 3 times a day.
Gotcha. For mine, it's like, okay, I need materials. Whisper the person. Okay, whisper the next person. Whisper the next person. Whisper the next person. Whisper. A few hours later. End of page. Okay, let's start again from the top. And then, you know what I mean? Like, do that sort of thing. Then you, like, find a bot, and it trades you really quickly. Like, oh, thank God there's bots in this game. You know what I mean? That shouldn't be, like, I'm hoping that I get a bot currency bot at this point, because they actually answer you. Anytime that's the experience, it's like, what the heck is going on here? And that's a combination of things, like, not updating quick enough. And a lot of times, the site just going down for the trade and other stuff, but also just the player base has grown so darn much that everything is just flying off the shelf. There's so much demand.
Yeah, it's a system that has trouble keeping up with that large of a player base, I'd imagine. I don't envy you that problem. I think probably 95% of the time when I whisper someone, I get a response. It's nice. The downside is if I make a mistake, I have to start a new character.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
there's
I'm
a
not.
trade-off
You
there.
know what?
There's
I'm
a
not
trade-off.
sure. I'm not sure I'm willing to make that trade-off.
That's completely fair.
Yeah, exactly. I think I said to Tarky, so you play solo self on hardcore. What made you why do you hate your life so much? Have you always played hardcore in this game, or you played softcore for
No. I played softcore for the first probably 2 to 3 years that I played Path of Exile. And then for another few years, what I would do is I would league start softcore, play a couple builds, get a feel for the mechanic, and also give GGG time to hopefully sort out, any game crashes that the league had introduced. And then I'd swap to hardcore and play a character or two, which also was good for my stream because it would give me in that last month or month and a half of the league when people's interest is dwindling, it would give me a fresh restart, and that would get people interested in watching again sometimes.
Yeah, and it gives you perspective in both areas, right? What the trade league side versus the hardcore side, right?
Yeah. Recently, though, softcore trade has become a little too fast-paced for my liking, I think. It's people are I don't know this league because I didn't play it this league, but in the first day of the league, people are killing the end game bosses, right? The Exarch and Eater and whatever. I don't know how long it took to bring down the Uber versions of bosses in softcore. Maybe it was day 2 or something. But
I'm
I
sure
don't
people
know.
did it on day 1 with the Aura bot plus Spark character,
Yeah,
or something like that with a cheese, or like a 2-3 person group cheese, because you can get just absurd damage where stand there. So.
And the market becomes so flooded so quickly that you get a ring, let's say coral ring base with a T1 life roll and a T1 res roll and an open suffix. That's worthless in softcore. Absolutely worthless. It's vendor food. It's whatever the vendor will give you for it. In hardcore, I can probably sell that for 5 to 10 C, which isn't a lot, but it's enough that I click rings and I like to ID things. One of the first series I ever did on YouTube was a series called Price Check, where I would take a stash tab full of rares that I had picked up over the course of the day, go through, ID it all, price it all, and then either vendor it or list it. And I would just do that process on my YouTube channel as a video because that was a pretty regular thing that, most players were doing at that point, was picking up a lot of rare loot off the ground because people didn't map nearly as quickly. There wasn't as much loot. So it was a couple rings or a chest piece or something held value a lot longer into the league. And I really, really like that. I like sorting through loot to find something cool. And that experience is just completely gone in softcore trade. It
So
used to be.
this league, that it was actually there for quite a bit because of the whole changes, and people got absolutely stomped. Actually, even the end game bosses, a lot of people got stomped, so it didn't get flooded at all. Actually, no one was buying simulacrums. Usually, they're skyrocketing, stuff like that. No one's buying the invitations, and they're kind of cheap because just no one could do the content. So people were getting pretty stomped, for their thing. Plus, a lot of people use Headhunter as a crutch, and then they gutted that thing, and then I don't even know that it's actually to its form of glory after the changes. So a lot of people.
I've seen mixed opinions. Yeah, I've seen some people say that it's as good or better than it used to be, and some people say that it's still very dead. And I think it really depends on the build you're playing. It seems to be super powerful for a niche of Fizztail converted crit builds. And if you're playing something like that, it's really, really strong. But what I league started with was a Shield Crush Slayer, and that was Impale based and pure Fizz with brutality support. So if I threw on a Headhunter, I would lose half my damage every time if I killed a random rare that had Storm Strider, because I think they have 50% of Fizz converted to lightning, there goes half my damage in my brutality build. So it's really, really build specific now. which probably leads to the mixed opinions. I forget what I was just talking about though before the headhunter tangent.
You were
Oh
talking about IDing rare items and how you like that.
Yeah, so it's obviously, like, even in the context of hardcore trade, I still hide the majority of rares on the ground. It is a larger problem with Path of Exile in general. Most rares that drop are kind of worthless nowadays. But the fact that there's an item sink in hardcore, people die and things leave the economy, and the fact that there's just a smaller number of players, so there's fewer things being generated, means that they hold value longer. So I can hold on to that nostalgic vision or that nostalgic dream a little tiny bit longer than I could in softcore.
I think recombinators actually kind of was a
Oh, they
step in
help
the
a ton.
direction to help this as well, because actually getting like a 2 tier 1 property ring or something like that is now a big deal, because it could potentially steal those mods and use it in their combination. Plus, it also does, like you said, the sync, right? It destroys items as part of it with some of the mods, so you need way more items. So that sort of a sync was like really, really good for the game from my perspective.
I think recombinators are absolutely brilliant. I think they should stay in the game 100%. One of my favorite currencies, and it's one of the first YouTube videos I made about Path of Exile, one of my favorite currencies in the game is the Vol Orb. Because Vol Orbs are like durability, but fun. Because if you put durability into a game like Path of Exile or any other gear-based, equipment-based game, what it is effectively is a way of making an item sink. Because the developers don't want you to use the one item that you pick up off the ground at the start of the game for the entire game. And one solution to that is make it break eventually. But the problem with durability is it's really unpleasant when the thing you really like just randomly breaks eventually. However, Vol Orbs have a chance of making your item better. Most of the time, they'll ruin it. Most of the time, they'll break it. So, from the developer's point of view, it's still a great item sink. But from the player's point of view, instead of being boring durability where the thing just eventually breaks, it's a fun gamble that you get to play with. It's gambling as opposed to doing your taxes.
Yeah, I think they nailed this with the sentinels themselves as well, because they have a certain amount of charges, and then you're rolling the dice a little bit to craft another one. So it also forces you into a very common currency where you're getting used to recombinating things because you're recombinating the sentinels, and then there's a large gamble kind of sink in there with that. So I think they nailed that too. So it's just really a shame that Arch Nemesis went in at the same time as this league.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. But, I mean, hopefully they'll roll it into the core game. Almost, hopefully, at the same... I hope the drop rates of a lot of the stuff are almost at the same level, maybe a lot less Sentinels, where you see a cache and you pop out a bunch, but they're less common to just drop overall. I hope they really consider doing that, for sure.
Yeah. If I had to guess, I'd say that probably the Sentinel tree will go away, because they probably want to minimize the number of different UIs that players need to interact with. And you'll just get like random Sentinels out of caches, and then run them till they run dry. Maybe find another cache in another dozen maps or something. And Sentinels will probably be what I would like them to do, is make it so Sentinels have a much higher likelihood of giving Sentinel rewards, but not necessarily more Sentinels. So you only really get them from the caches to limit the number that you're doing. So you're not necessarily Sentineling every map unless you're trading for them. But you get a lot of recombinators from the Sentinels you do find. I don't know if they'll do it that way, but that would be nice. Just like how, when Blight was rolled core, they made it so that every single Blight had oils, which was not the case back in Blight League itself. And when Metamorph was rolled core, they made it so that every single Metamorph had an option to get catalysts, which was not the case back in Metamorph League itself. So it seems likely to me that if Sentinel were to go core, every single Sentinel will give some power cores or recombinators.
Yeah, hopefully. It's a fun little gamble. Gamble is fun. Don't like gambling in real life. Actually, I hate when I lose in gamble. I'm a sore loser. Sore gamble loser. So I definitely try to minimize gambling in real life unless I can absolutely throw away whatever thing if I lose. It won't be a big deal. I hate gambling in general. What do you think about the changes to the drops of like Ashes and Omni? Do Do you know anything about what they are right now?
I know that I think Steel Mage farmed like 50 plus Eater of Worlds and didn't see ashes or something. I like that they chose the route of making them more rare instead of nerfing the items directly themselves, but I think they just went too far. And I don't really think it's like more complicated than that. I think if they just scale it back some, not back to the drop rate they had before, because then they'd probably need to nerf the amulets, but scale it back some, dial it back another like 20% or something. And then I think you're good. Like, I'm fine with Ashes and Omni being fairly expensive. It's a little unreasonable that they're like 50 something X. You know.
Yeah, I just farmed 50 and I got an Ashes, and I lost money doing 50 sets.
Wow, how expensive is a set?
They're going for 1.4, 1.5x in
Oh,
softcore for one Eater set, so I did 50 Eater. I lost
that's
6x.
surprisingly close to hardcore's about 1.3, 1.4 as well.
Yeah, I also chose the node where from the bosses you're supposed to get a 20% chance to get a Conqueror map, and I only got 4 Conqueror maps in 50. So
That
that was suspicious, right? Because I was
yeah,
expecting kind of more.
that doesn't sound right.
I also only got 3 or 4 forbidden fleshes. So that was, and only 1 melding of the flesh. So I'm also wondering, did they actually nerf melding of the flesh down to like 2% drop chance, 1%, like the jewel as well? So
Could be. I think Lily was farming for in Ashes. I don't remember how many she did, but she found like 4 or 5 meldings before. I don't know if she's even gotten the Ashes yet.
yeah, I did one. I got 1 ashes and 1 melding, and I thought it would be like 10% still for that at least.
Hmm.
When I decided to do it, so my expectation was 1 ashes, probably somewhere around 5 melding, and probably 5 forbidden. I got 4 1 1, and then
I think
I lost money.
I think the best boss unique they've ever designed is Watcher's Eye, because they were really clever about the design in that like Watcher's Eye has the potential to be incredibly powerful if you luck into like double hatred or triple anger or something like that. But because most Watcher's Eyes are going to be not great or maybe decent, they're able to make it so that the boss drops it with like a, 1 in 4, 1 in 5, maybe even more than that rate. So you can still get excited, like the Watcher's Eye drops and it's on ID and you have that moment of like, oh, this could be amazing. But it doesn't mean that the economy is flooded and the item is worthless, you know?
Well, I mean, they did that with the forbidden flesh or
Yeah,
forbidden flame
exactly.
things too, which I thought was really brilliant doing 1 ascendancy. Though I thought the Uber bosses were going to drop like 2 property ones of one.
Oh my
Awesome.
god, that would have been
Oh
insane.
my gosh, yeah, that's what I was
And getting it
hoping
to
for.
match up, my god, getting it to match
But
up
it
with
could be
2?
like let's say hypothetically it's a Marauder one. You could get like a Chieftain and a Jug ascendancy together. Like it doesn't
Yeah.
even necessarily choose that or something. Or maybe even do the variants where like you get 2 classes, so you get 1 ranger one and 1 marauder one, but you'd have to be a marauder to do it, right? So it'd be like super rare to get 2 on marauder, and then you'd also have the matching one. Oh, that would have been so sick.
That would have been broken.
Maybe if they had a Uber
Yeah,
boss.
I don't know where they're gonna go with the next league, because they said they're gonna keep iterating on the end game with the next handful of leagues, and it's like you did Uber, where do you go? I thought
Well,
Uber
I
Elder would
think
be
they'll
just a
do.
joke.
I think they'll do jewel sockets, and then they could do cluster jewels on the tree.
Oh god. I don't know.
Right? I mean, that would
That
be the next
I
progression. That
sure.
masteries, jewel sockets. That's two
I'd be excited
expansions. Which
about
should
it.
I'd be really excited about those. Yeah, I don't know.
I think
I
they did
think
a great job with the keystones though, for the
yeah,
most part.
that's very good. And just not only the keystones, but the new notables are really sick. The fact that you could block certain content, like right at the start, you can
Mhm.
choose 4 or 5 of those, and then yeah, also the keystones are like really sick. So all that stuff I think is really good. It's just It is such a shame that like Arch Nemesis came out right here with it, and some of the other stuff. Like, man, why can't they stick the landing? They're so close with some of this stuff. Like, there's so much really cool stuff, like we just talked about. Sentinel stuff, so awesome. The changes to the keystones, the masteries, so awesome. And then they have this one thing, and then most people will just experience that one thing and go, well, that sucks. Screw this game.
It's hard to make video games, man, because you
Hey,
have
I
that,
don't
like you
envy
said, you have that
them. You
one
know what
quick
I
point.
mean? Like, yeah. I'm gonna start making like I told you, like I was probably gonna make a tech channel, so I'm gonna start making my own video games. I'm gonna make my own video games, and then I'm just gonna make a YouTube video. It's like a catalyst for YouTube content, right? So I'll just like make my own game, and then like kind of do a video essay, entertainment video around like what I learned from the process. Not try to make a serious game like this. So I do not envy creators trying to do this stuff because I mean, just the complexity of PoE. Every single one of the systems built on the other one, and then it's very like fragile where you change one thing and then overlook stuff. So I do not envy any of that stuff, especially since I've worked in computer systems, of course, on the business side. But even that, like there's so many bugs that get in there that are obscure, and it's even a bigger issue there when you have multi-million-dollar companies or billion-dollar companies using that product for their finances or their inventory, and you introduce a bug, which sometimes happens, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's
Software.
scary, honestly, when you think of it on that scale.
And then it gets further scary because now we have all these AIs that are better at programming than us that kind of just start programming themselves, and we don't know what the hell they do. It's some machine learning stuff, buzzwords that we like to pretend that most people know what it is. I had machine learning and Web3 and all that crap. And then people, like most people, don't know what it is. They just use the buzzwords so that they sound cool, but really the machine's doing some stuff in the background, and I don't know. You think YouTube knows what the heck the algorithm really truly does? No, they kind of know what it kind of does, but they make one little tweak to it, or it makes a tweak to itself, and then it goes off the rails and takes everyone's. All right, that was a mouthful, huh?
Yeah, it's a black box. It's impossible to know what's in there.
Yeah, very, very interesting stuff. Okay, so let's switch some gears here and go
Sure.
all the way back to something like you mentioned 45 minutes ago. When you first started shoutcasting, you mentioned like it took you a while to hone your craft and stuff like that. What was your experience early on in doing that? What were some things that you had to work through, and how did you go about working through that?
Well, the first big thing was, I guess, the internet equivalent to stage fright of, just being nervous to put yourself behind a microphone or in front of a camera and record it and put it out there and, record it and put it out there and do it live and all that sort of thing. And I realized this may not be like the most big brain and world changing piece of advice, but for me, the way I got past it was just repetition, just making it mundane, because for the first few months of streaming, it was like I was always a little worried clicking the go live button, because I think one of the first people that ever showed up in my chat and actually said a message was something like, I think the first message they sent was "you suck," and then "you need to stop humming, no one wants to watch this," and then they left. And like
they open with "you suck."
they did open with "you suck." Yes,
They
weren't specific, so I still don't know whether like as a person I suck or my build sucked or what, but something about it sucked.
I'm just picturing it. There you are, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed. Look over to the chat. Oh wow!
A
first message. It's gonna be amazing. You suck. Ah!
Yeah, no, it was rough, but like you quickly come to realize that the people who feel that way leave, and the people who like your content generally choose to stick around. So as long as you keep making content that is, consistent, you keep trying to get better, whether it's getting better at just expressing your thoughts and enunciating clearly, or better at playing the video game, or getting, a nicer microphone or that sort of thing, better technically. As long as you keep being consistent and getting better, the people who like what you do are going to be happy, and they're going to stick around, and they're going to very quickly outnumber the people who are just being awful. And I find that's very much the case nowadays, where, I've got a core community who are really honestly wonderful and kind to me. And if I do ever get any, it doesn't happen very often, to be entirely honest, but if I do ever get somebody coming into the channel and just being hateful or spewing vitriol, they get shown the door rather quickly. Oftentimes I don't even notice the message. I just see, I don't know, internet Twitch boy number 725 has been banned by your moderator. And I'll ask, like, oh, what did they say? And then my mod will repeat back to me some awful thing that they said. And I'm like, oh, okay, good job. And then we just move on. I don't know.
Yeah. I think that's one of the things that people definitely take for granted, what you kind of touched on. Repetition, and you got to keep hitting the record button, and you got to practice. Yep. Think of something and keep practicing it. A lot of people see the finished product or whatever point of content creators, and even a lot of YouTubers and stuff like that. A lot of times it's not their first channel. It might be their third or fourth channel, and they failed and face planted for very many times, and then you're not even seeing that product. So a lot of people just think that, like, okay, they hit record for the first time, and now it's all of a sudden immaculate thing. And at birth, they were gifted with the knowledge of this editing software. Wow, what a voice. All these things. But really, people take for granted just everything that goes into setup of even like OBS. If you're putting filters in there, try to configure your camera. What happens? What about lighting? What are you actually saying on the thing? You're kind of like a producer, director. You're the actual talent. You're the camera guy. You're the, lighting specialist, costume design, whatever stuff. You know what I mean? Sound engineer. And if you just look at movies, that's 10, 20, 30 people's job. And kind of as a YouTuber or a Twitch person, especially when you're starting out, you're a one-man team. You got to figure all that out.
Mm-hmm. It's a lot to work on. And like, my main advice, because I've been asked a few times, like, what's the best way to get into content creation and all that, or Twitch streaming in particular. My main advice is just to try and focus on the content that you're making, because so often I get people, who are like, what's the absolute best microphone I can buy? What's the best webcam I can get? What's the best, way I can set my room up? What's the best, lighting? Like, those are important things. I'm not trying to diminish the importance of them on a long-term Twitch channel's success or YouTube channels or something like that. But if you have a decent enough microphone that you don't sound like you're in a war zone, and you don't even really need a webcam to begin with, then if you're putting out entertaining content, if you're good at the game, if you're making good guides, if you're making good characters, if you're succeeding, people are going to gravitate more towards that than, someone who is not doing all of those things but has really nice lighting and a great webcam. Because people are the reality of it is, like, people have 500,000 different things they could do with their free time nowadays. Like, on Twitch alone, in the Path of Exile section alone, there's probably like 300 streams going that they could click on. And then you broaden that to the larger number of streams on Twitch, or then to the fact that YouTube exists, and then the fact that Netflix is out there. And, maybe you could go outside even at some point and touch some grass or something.
What's this?
So, like,
never heard of it.
You have to be objectively providing something that has some amount of value, be that in, informational value, entertainment, nutritional value somehow. If you manage that, good job. Like you
really, do you get a lot of nutritional value streams? What do you just like
not so much myself.
All right, eat up. Here comes the ship. Here comes the ship. Open wide.
Like you you got to think about it from the viewer's perspective, though. Like, if you're not providing something that's worth their rather limited free time, why would they stay? They're not your friend. They're not like I'm not trying to say that to be a dick or something. It's just like people don't owe you their time. You're providing something, and it has to be good enough for them to stay.
So in terms of background versus camera versus mic, what would be the order of most
Microphone is the
important?
most important.
Yep.
People can put up with not having a camera or having a crappy camera much more easily than they'll put up with not having a good microphone. The
You don't
and
even
I'd say
need
that
you don't even need a good one. You just need one that isn't going to get people to click off. Don't
yeah.
over obsess about like buying some multi-$100 one. Like you probably
Mhm.
could buy a headset or some starter one that you put close to your face and it'll be fine. So it
Yeah.
needs to not kill their ears.
The microphone that I used for the first 3 years was a Snowball. Blue Snowball, I think it's called. It was like $65,
Blue Yeti
and
snowball.
yeah,
That brand.
it was like $60 or $70 or something. And it didn't sound awful. It didn't sound great. It wasn't studio quality, but like it wasn't so bad that it was distracting, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like you just want it to be good enough that like people don't notice some problem with it. If there's crackling noise or constant, popping or something, then that's an issue. Like right now, because my stand mic broke down a couple months ago and I haven't gotten a new one. Right now I'm on a little headset microphone, and like I had a couple people say, "Oh, what happened to the stand mic?" But for the most part it hasn't really changed my like viewership numbers or anything. It's just slightly different sounding audio. But if it were like, horrible and crackly and stuff, I probably would have lost more than half my viewers.
Well, that or just maxing it out too. It's very important that it's not doing
Yeah.
that. Because that's very, very irritating, even more so than the popping, I think, if you're
Hmm.
maxing it out. However, I watch tons and tons of YouTube to get ideas and look at styles and stuff. And yesterday I came across a video that had 7.5 million views, and it was maxing out the mic, and it was click off audio, and it's still got
7.5 million
views. So if you're making other entertaining things, even the audio you can get by. If you actually find some sort of a topic that there isn't a lot of or is very appealing to people, and also if you can actually get them to click in on the YouTube side, it doesn't even, none of that stuff even matters as much as can you get someone to click your thumbnail plus title. Probably the
Hmm.
most important thing. And the second most important thing is, does your audio not make them click off immediately? And then the third is, do you have a script or some sort of a plan where you're not a babbling idiot?
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. What are did you have a problem with did you ever do like singing or anything like that before you did shoutcasting?
Growing up, I went to music camp and I took vocal lessons.
Okay.
I never did it for like a large audience, but yeah.
Did you have problems when I never really did the vocal stuff. When I recorded myself and listened back to it, it didn't sound like me or what I thought was me for a while. And it took me probably recording 20, 30 videos before like they became the same. Like my brain rewired to like
Hmm.
do whatever magic it needed to do that now it sounds the same. Did you have that?
Yeah. Yeah, at the beginning. I always thought my voice was a lot higher than it actually is.
Yeah, you have a pretty low voice, actually.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like pretty much everybody says it, but I didn't really like the sound of my own voice to begin with. And there was a little bit there where, like, when I was shoutcasting, I would try to actively compensate for that and make my voice sound the way I wanted it to sound, and it just came out sounding like weird and strained. So I
Mm-hmm.
stopped doing that pretty quickly.
Yeah, I know what you mean on that stuff. Yeah, it's always same with like singing and stuff. That can happen too.
Hmm.
Like when you try to mimic a song or something and sing in there. Well, maybe like me, I have a lower voice, so it's better to just sing an octave down or something like that. Otherwise, it sounds really, really bad.
Yeah, no, I don't know that the because I went to music camp for like 3 years as a kid, and I don't know whether the vocal training there really stuck with me much. I was like 11, 12, and 13, so I
Hmm.
paid a lot more attention to the games of frisbee that we played at camp than I did a lot of the music lessons.
Hmm. So, if you had to start again for content creation, because you said that you grew your whole Twitch thing when it was kind of, there wasn't a lot of competition, what do you think you would do?
I would not rely on Twitch for growth in the slightest. I think YouTube has a lot better discoverability tools. I think, I mean, Twitch can be useful for growth if you can network well with other creators. And networking well with other creators usually means reaching out to them to work on some kind of project and like bringing something to the table. So it's not just going to somebody and being like, host me, please, host me, and
That's
expecting that
that's
to work.
that's that's not how to approach it. You sure?
No, that's not a
Okay.
very good idea. What you want to do is like try and find some way you can be collaborative. So, you can, if it's somebody who's around a similar level to you in terms of viewership, like you got a dozen viewers or so, and it's somebody else in the same section who's around like 10, 15, 20 viewers, then you can host them and, maybe try and get your community involved in theirs. And then they might return the favor in the future. Don't pressure it. Don't make it like some sort of exchange or something, but you can, try and build rapport that way. Or something similar to what this show is, where you try and reach out to other creators and collaborate with them on creating some kind of content that people would enjoy watching,
Hmm.
whether that be, I think Zizaran does something where he'll work with other build creators on like spotlighting a build guide, like he worked with Pox on his RF build this league. So that's an excellent way of going about it. Podcasts are a good way. You can do like, I don't know if you're familiar with him. Nervier. He does the try before you buy videos. So he showcases a lot of like MTX and stuff for people to watch on his channel, and gives reviews of different Path of Exile MTX and all that. And like I've worked with him before in like little skits and stuff that he does before some of his videos, where I pretended to like really really like the clown MTX back when that came out, and then like we got in a Discord call. I pretended to love the clown MTX, and then he, ended the Discord call midway through the sentence, and that was the clip at the start of the
Oh,
video. So that sort of thing, where you're like actively bringing value to someone
yeah,
else's
yeah.
content, like you're both building with one another instead of just like trying to leech off someone is that's really important. And having a presence outside of Twitch is really important. Having a YouTube channel that you're posting to regularly. I say that I don't post to my YouTube channel regularly, but it's still good advice even if I'm not doing it. Having a Twitter,
If you were streaming to 10 people, you'd probably, that'd be higher up on your priority list.
yes, absolutely. I mainly haven't been doing YouTube stuff because I have been doing a lot of sorting my life out in terms of real life stuff, outside of streaming, and it's left very little time for things other than streaming lately.
Hmm. Gotcha. So you went as a guest to Exilecon.
Hmm.
How did you get to the point where you, first of all, was you were invited to go help host that, and then what was that whole experience like?
I think there was a large element of luck involved. And actually, it ties back into the previous point that I was just making in terms of trying to like network in a way that brings value to other people's content as well. Because the one of the things that's brought me probably more viewers and success and all that to my channel and my career doing this than anything else is being a part of the Baeclast podcast, which I'm only a part of that because I reached out to Tarky and asked if it would be okay if I would be a guest. And, I basically presented a case saying like, hey, I'm pretty good at this game. I'm good at this stuff. We want to have me on the show. And he brought me on for an episode. I did a good job. People liked me. So he brought me back and eventually made me a core member of the crew. And through that, I met GGG employees because they occasionally go on the show. And through that, I was invited to be a part of Exilecon. So it kind of snowballed from there.
Gotcha. What did you is that when you first reached out to Tarky, was asking to be on the podcast, or did you try to do a different collab outside of that? Or
No, it was I was just, I don't know. It was the first time that I had reached out to him, and I just wanted to, like, I was trying to be very direct and frank without coming off as like being too. I wasn't trying to pretend to be his friend in order to get on the show, basically.
Mhm.
And that's not to say that Tarky isn't my friend over the years. I've been on the podcast with him. We've done a lot of stuff. I went to Exilecon with him. We've definitely become friends over the years. But back when I had initially messaged him to be on the show, I'd watched some of his videos and his streams and his podcasts, but we had never really talked before. I didn't know him. So I didn't go up to him like all buddy, being like trying to pretend there's some kind of relationship there and be like, hey, you want to let me on the show? No, it was just like, this is what I could bring to the show. I feel like I'm pretty good at this. Let me know if you agree. And I feel like being direct like that and being civil basically is a very good way to operate in a ecosystem where people often try and leverage social and parasocial relationships into trying to get clout.
Mhm. Do you have do a lot of people reach out to you for collabs or to do content?
Not so much. I'm I'm mid-level within Path of Exile at best, um, which is already somewhat of a niche community. So I don't really have any illusions about where I stand as a streamer. I enjoy what I do. I make enough money that I've been able to pay bills and rent off of it, but I don't, I'm not extremely successful. But I'm okay with that. Like I just really, really love Path of Exile, and I like making content for people on it, and that's why I do it. I don't know.
Have you ever had anyone ask for a collab where you're like, what the actual hell is this nonsense? Hell no.
I've had some weird sponsorship opportunities where I had a guy reach out to me from a clothing company in Italy, and I was like, how the hell did you even find me? I didn't take the sponsorship because I had no idea like if the product was any good or anything like that. But like
Mhm.
the first sponsorship opportunity I ever got actually was for a toothbrush company, which again made me go, "What the hell? What? Why?"
They scrape probably. You got to a certain amount of
Yeah,
views on
yeah.
Twitch or whatever, they scrape it and then they just mass email. So the thing saying we watched all your content, we really like you was
Oh
bullshit.
yeah. No,
Just
I've had people be like, "I love your content on YouTube," and it's been like a month since I posted on YouTube. It's like, yeah, yeah,
you hit
sure.
the threshold of subscribers that we got scraped and we're just mass emailing, but we totally are pretending like that. Hey, I haven't watched any of your videos, but you seem like a reasonable side. So, do you want to place our podcast? People. I don't know. I appreciate directness as well, very much so. I
I
hate
think it,
all this like kid glove posturing bullshit. I hate it. Just tell me you hate me, okay? Let's
I
like
don't
I
hate
don't
you.
care. Well, I'm saying if someone hated me, just tell me no. I don't like you.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Don't be like, well, blah, blah, blah. Well, I might, but maybe whatever. I don't know. I hate that shit in relationships. I hate that shit in any of that posturing. Just say no, dude. It'll be okay.
Yeah, no, I honestly I owe Tarky quite a lot of the somewhat limited success that I've had. It's Baeclast has been a huge opportunity for me, and I'm really glad that I've been a part of it for as long as I have now.
Mm-hmm. Let's see here. So then you got invited to. So we were going over the Exilecon. Like,
Yeah,
what was the VIP? I'm a presenter experience like for you?
it was nice. They sent me a little gift baggie to my hotel room when I got there. It had New Zealand chocolate in it, and that did not last very long. And I got a little plushy sand crawler critter. What are these things called again? Sand spitters, I think. This little guy. I
Oh,
got one
okay.
of these in the bag too. He can see you with his many eyes. And I got a little badge which is hanging up on the wall over there, that says Octavian Zero Media, and I got to get a free drink at the after party.
Ooh,
Yeah, it
nice.
was very cool. I was also allowed to sit up at the front row for the show, which was neat. They had me on the show for, I did a little segment. Oh, there was one thing where there was supposed to be a segment talking. There was a segment talking about like how creators make builds, where people's build ideas come from and stuff. And I think they had Engineering Eternity, they have Rise, they had Mathel, they had I don't remember whether it was Tarky or Ziggy, and myself all scheduled to be on that show, but the couch on the stage wasn't big enough for everyone to sit on it. So I stepped back from that section of the show because they didn't have a big enough couch. And it was going to be like either I got cut or I think like I don't remember who else it was, but somebody else was going to get cut, and they hadn't had anything on stage yet. So I stepped back so that since I had another segment coming up anyway,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to be a jerk. But the segment that I was on for, I got to interview Neon and Rory, talking about basically whatever design concepts I wanted to talk about. They just kind of gave me, like, as far as the organization of the show went, they didn't give me a script or anything or even talking points. They gave me a 20-minute segment in the show and were like, you're going to be interviewing these two very lead devs at the company. Come up with smart things to talk about. And I was so goddamn nervous, like because it was on like the second or third day of the event. So for the first like 2 days that I was in New Zealand, I was just so incredibly nervous, right? Constantly writing down ideas in a little notebook that I had and crossing things out and going, nah, that's stupid. Ah,
That's
God.
funny.
But they trusted me, and they trusted like a bunch of content creators, like I think God, it was so long ago now. I think Amy interviewed one of the developers or one of the like lead art designers about the art design of PoE2. There's a ton of interviews. If I start listing them off, I'm going to forget someone and then I'm going to feel bad. But there was basically a whole bunch of interviews done by various content creators. And I don't think basically anybody got a script, Like nobody was told, like, you have to go over these points. They just got a big topic to talk about, and then they were given the freedom within their 20 or 30-minute block to talk about it with the dev however they felt like and ask whatever questions they thought would be appropriate. And like that is a lot of trust to place in the community of people who are creating content for your game. That is a lot of trust. Like this was going out to 200,000 people. I could have gotten up on that stage and just said big farts or something. I wasn't going to do
Was
that, but
that
I
what
could.
was on the page one of your
Yes,
notes
yeah,
that you scribbled out? Big
that's one of the ones I
farts.
scribbled out.
No. Nice.
So
Did
it
you
surprised me,
were you
honestly.
able to just walk around and do whatever you wanted at the conference, or did you have to kind of like stay behind in some sort of VIP area, or how did that work?
No, you could go around wherever you wanted. Oh, they did have me briefly sit down on the top floor and sign things for people, which was goddamn surreal.
Like,
Like
people care about me.
people, not a lot, admittedly, but like I think 15 or 20 people came by and wanted me to sign their Exilecon like Atlas poster or a T-shirt or something, which was crazy.
Yeah. I mean, you really take for granted what you don't see the people in person.
Yeah.
Like, I
No,
think I have 4 million total views on YouTube, which is probably
it's a
like 400,000 unique people or something like that, probably, maybe
uh-huh.
even more. And that's like, I can't comprehend that number.
Human beings just don't have brains that work on that scale.
Exactly. I can tell you, like, my high school graduating class was like 220 people or something. I can cut, and that was a lot.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? My whole high school gymnasium or whatever was like 800 or 1,000 because it was about the same for all the grades, and that seemed like a lot of people.
It was one of the more humbling experiences of my life.
When you were on stage, how many people actually were in the audience?
Physically,
Yeah, physically, like there in the
Uh,
audience.
I was on. So they had a auditorium, and that stage was where they did the main presentation for Exilecon. And then they also had going on during pretty much the entirety of Exilecon. There was a live stream, and that live stream was recorded in like the main entrance of the convention hall. So there wasn't really. It wasn't so much like a stage in the building itself. It was like a little couch and a desk and stuff that was set up on a little like platform with a few TV cameras in front of it, and that was being recorded and sent out. So there were people gathered in front of it, maybe like 30, 40 people, but there weren't any seats or anything around it.
Got you. Where your segment wasn't on the main stage.
No, no.
How many on that main stage? How many seats were there? Looks like a lot.
Uh, I'm not very good at estimating numbers, but maybe
Yeah, me
five to eight
neither.
hundred.
That's like on.
Five
This
to
is
eight
something
hundred,
I
I
didn't think
guess.
about, but yeah, that's a lot of people. Imagine the yeah. When I talked to Tarky, I didn't ask him like was he super nervous talking in front of 800 people because it's a little bit different.
Yeah, and we had the Baeclast show live there too as well. That was they didn't give us any like direction or script. They were just like,
They're just like
do a Baeclast show.
do an episode, you know. You're like about what you know a show,
Well,
do it.
it was about the things that because it happened after the reveal of PoE 2 and the reveal of Metamorph and all that. So like it was an
Yeah,
episode
you had
about
like that.
that.
You had a bunch of stuff to talk about then because you
So
just had your minds blown.
we had like 10 minutes to, think about it and stuff
Yeah,
and sort out our thoughts and then do a show.
that's funny. Yeah, they took a huge risk there. It seemed like it paid off. So yeah,
Yeah.
I don't think they're ever going to do that again. Do you think they will do another Exile con?
Um Chris mentioned after the show that he really enjoyed it and he'd be interested in doing another, but then, a pandemic happened and that threw a wrench into the works of anything on a large scale gathering, obviously. So I have no idea where they stand now. That things are, I mean, still going on, slash winding down, slash some, I don't know, it's a mess.
Yeah,
Um, but one thing that'll always stick with me from the convention is that so they had a bunch of different people doing signings. They had some voice actors from the game. The woman who voiced Zana was doing signings. The man who voiced Einhar was. Other content creators like Mathel and Rise and Ziggy and stuff. But they also had Chris Wilson signing things, and he drew, unsurprisingly, the biggest crowd. Basically, everybody wanted Chris Wilson to sign a thing for them. And to the point where it was like 11 p.m. and the convention center was closing, and there was still a line of 60, 70 people at least who wanted something for him to sign. So what he did is he took a desk, went outside because the convention center was closing, and in like drizzling rain, just sat there for another hour signing things for people.
wow, that's pretty crazy.
He was just, he didn't have to do that.
Yeah, there's very few people on the planet who would do that sort of thing. So
Yeah, it cemented my respect for the man.
mhm. I think that's a perfect note to end on it. You know, on a positive kind of thing to ponder. So unless you got any other subjects you want to bring up.
No, I think we just about covered it.
All right. So I'm going to have all of your socials down in the description. So make sure you're checking out Octavian on Twitch, his YouTube, which soon he'll start posting new stuff on. And
yes, I'm going to be
and
moving in about a week. So once I'm set up at the new place, hopefully I can get the free
yeah,
time to do YouTube more.
And Twitter as well. So thank you so much for joining. And I learned a lot. It's really fun hearing about your experiences. Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Bye, guys.